All right, we're live. We're back. It's Wednesday with the Positive Effect. My name's April, and I'm so excited today because I've got Meghan Houle. How do you say your last name?
Houle. It's like pool with an
Yeah.
H. Yeah.
He's right. So we've got Meghan Houle. So if you haven't been on our weekly live yet, I'm April, and I'm here to bring to life really career conversations about retail leaders that I'm blessed to have an amazing network of friends of retail leaders now that have pivoted and done different things and grown in their career from shop floor. And so every week we show up and we have these conversations, and I bring in my friends and retail network to basically share, and I get to pick their brain and ask tons of questions so that we can share it with all of you in my retail network, and maybe you can learn something from these amazing leaders that have had these awesome careers in retail. Because yesterday I was reading a stats before we get into you, Meghan. We're going to get into it in a minute, but yesterday I posted an article actually that was from LinkedIn, and it was the news feed, and they had done a stats on careers and industries, and again retail was not listed in the list of industries. And I posted I was like, I'm so frustrated that every time there's an employment survey, retail is not mentioned as industry. And I was like, if I was filling that out, where would I put myself? So that's why I come here every Wednesday and show up live and really start having this career conversation about retail, because retail is not just a job. It is a very rewarding career. And sometimes we don't get to share that internal viewpoint, right, on a bigger platform like this. So that's what the Positive Effect is really for. And so today I'm talking to Meghan about her retail career, and I'm super excited to get you on. You've got so much going on right now. So we're going to start off. I always have my list of questions, right?
Okay.
We've got 30 minutes to share as much. And hi, Diana from New Jersey. Nice to see you. Yeah, if you join the chat and you're putting comments in, just, share where you're from. If you have any questions for us as we're going, or any comments, just make them in the chat for us. So we're going to start off with, tell me about your career journey, your retail career journey, and then we'll get into where you're going and what's going on a bit later. But yeah, share a bit about your retail career journey, because you actually come from sales and operations, correct? If I get that right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for retail and my mom. Thanks, Mom, for giving birth to me. But then secondly, and just like thrusting myself in the service industry at a very young age. I mean, for me, it was that quick love of like being in stores and helping people and kind of growing through it all. So, I mean, my retail career started with a fantastic foundation working with limited brands. It was my first taste, I guess, of like being in a big corporate company. I actually worked for Bath and Body Works, in the heyday of like late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, I was like started as like the Christmas girl helper, like put me in the front with a snowman flake, thing on and wrapping the baskets. And it was awesome. I mean, I was so excited to show up every day because you never know who you got to meet. I loved helping a lot of the gentlemen that came in that were like, oh my God, what do I get for my wife? And I was just like, I got you, come here. And it was just really about building relationships, but also trust for the ladies that would come in, where at Bath and Body Works, we had a lot of product, and at that point, we could demo with people and touch and feel. I mean, that's a very intimate, trusting sort of space. So for me, always making people feel comfortable, making them feel welcomed, that was something that I just think, you're kind of born with it, that almost, it's like a skill, which is a great, I guess, industry for me to be in retail, because I do love people. So that was my foundation. And from, that, I just really saw that potential to continue to grow. And when I was working at Bath and Body Works, I decided to make a move to a big city. So I'm in actually Boston now, in Massachusetts. And I came to Boston to actually take a first big time, sort of what I thought, at the moment was like the intermix of Newbury Street for us here in Boston, this great little brand that carried all these different designers and I pinched myself, you know, this girl from upstate New York, working when I was at Bath and Body Works. I was down on Cape Cod and came into the city, and I'm like, I'm on Newbury Street. I made it. You know, Newbury Street was like the Rodeo Drive of Boston. And it was awesome. I mean, again, another heyday where it's like early 2000s, mid 2000s, foot traffic, people, like it was a religion. Like every Saturday was a party. Oh my goodness, especially in the summertime, doors open. It was amazing. And I really started to hone in on my leadership skills there as I took over a really big flagship, an important flagship for the company, and actually was promoted a few times. Where I was promoted into a DM role and then a regional role and opening stores and doing all the operations and training. And, you know, it always does go back to my foundation with limited brands. So, I mean, and having that training with operations, like all the binders, all the steps, all the checklists, you know, do you remember? Oh my gosh, I was like, how many binders? And like, what do I have to do every day? But it really secured such a wonderful foundation in me that I carried around through my whole career. And taking it to this, you know, smaller business here in Boston, they're like, wow, this girl knows her stuff. And I'm like, well, not really. Like, I'm just coming in and doing what I love to do, where I'm sure we've all worked with those people that we see that probably should not be in retail. Yeah. And I'm like, if you're going to sit in the back room all day and play on the computer, there's business in the store, you know, not only from like a loss prevention point of view, but there's women in the fitting room, people trying things on, you know, it's just so many cool ways that you get to help people. So I really was so thankful for my time with a small sort of boutique brand. And what happens is 2007, 2008, they actually went through a bankruptcy, which was kind of sad. I mean, I talk about this a lot in my stories and my pivots, where this was kind of a big pivot for me back in the day, was like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, where's my job? You know, for me, I always really had something kind of like lined up or looking, and I wasn't really looking, and you're kind of thrusted without any of your control into the unknown. So I was interviewing, and I came across a wonderful position with an LVMH that I actually got through working with a recruiter. And I was hired on to my first luxury experience working with Louis Vuitton here in Boston, which was so incredible. I started off working inside of a Saks department store in Elise, which I loved that experience because the energy of a department store, you know, I was a Louis Vuitton employee, but I had this responsibility to the whole building, you know, where we got to have the Saks clients come in. I got to work with like the Fifth Avenue Club, which was a high end, you know, very amazing clientele that we would go up and do special presentations for. We got to see and just feel the energy of things like coming in and out of Saks. I mean, of course, like at Louis Vuitton, we didn't participate in the promos or the double points. He said, well, I think you get double points, but no sales, no discounts, except for tax-free weekend in Massachusetts. But it was just awesome. Like the Saks client was so loyal. And I loved my like 1,400 square foot, amazing, like beautiful boutique at Louis. And it was actually a great place for me to start because it was a little bit of a smaller environment. Yeah. Having my first taste into luxury. Yeah. Where I'm always someone who is like, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. And I'm a sponge. I think if you go through life thinking you know it all, it's a pretty dangerous mindset to have. So I was like, okay, I'm selling my first like $5,000 bag, you know, going from selling two.
I remember when I worked at Holtz, right? And I remember the president at the time said to us in a meeting, he said, you know, when you first get here, you look at $10,000 as a bag and you're like, oh my God, $10,000. And then all of a sudden it becomes normal.
Oh, yeah.
You do every day. And he said, don't ever let that become normal because it's not, right? So he goes to keep us in that service mindset of like that customer that's purchasing that, right? Like such a different experience.
It really is. I mean, from going for what I thought was, you know, investing in $200 jeans to then going, you know, into Louis Vuitton and the price point entry for like the Speedy, the Neverfull, which were the classic bags were $600-700. I was like, whoa. But then, yes, you absolutely get price skewed, where I sold my first exotic, a $30,000 ostrich backpack, April. Like, I can't. I was like, oh, the poor ostrich. Okay, so I'm like, whoa, that. So then the $3,000 and the $5,000 bags, I'm like, oh, that's a bargain. My husband's like, oh, you need to like reset your price threshold here, Miss Lady. But no.
So you were in Louis, and then how did you go into? Because I'm going to ask you some questions about leadership.
Yeah.
But how did you go then into recruitment? Because there's a lot of people that watch the feed. Hey, Lisa, nice to see you today. So there's a lot of people that see this feed that are from store management operations and have done or in that midst right now where you were. Like you went from Limited and you went into Louis and you had this, experience. And you're on the shop floor, and there's a lot of people watching this episodes specifically to learn how you went to the next step, because I think that's always a question that I always got asked was, how do I get from like shop floor to office, or how do I get to like a different role in my career? So how did that happen?
Yeah, you follow your passions, right? And you really sit in your soul and you're like, okay, what am I really good at? And throughout my entire career, all I've done is hire and interview people. I mean, the biggest time of that truly came from when I was working with the small boutique in Boston and opened stores all across the country. I mean, I was staffing left and right. And, there was a lot of turnover then at that point too in that business. So I'm like, gosh, I love hiring. It's almost like a puzzle piece, right? You're fitting in, okay, I have a need, I have a person, and make it happen. So at Louis Vuitton, coming from Saks, I was promoted to the big global store here in Boston. And I was there for almost 6 years. And then really started to get an itch in my soul, being even in the bigger store and hiring and helping. I'm like, okay, what is next? And I knew I probably didn't want to be the full GM of that business. I loved leadership. I really did. But it was time for my pivot. And the first thing I would say is for anybody look inside your current business. Now, for me, starting to become very vocal about my goals and what I wanted to do. And this could apply to operations. It could apply, to anything, but I was really starting to talk to HR. And I always say, maybe I should have started in HR, but you know what? I will never discount my experience in stores, because I will tell you, being on the floor gives you so much credibility when you are pivoting to have a relatability factor that you get it. You know what it's like to open a business. You know what it's like to be responsible for that. So I'm so grateful for the time I've had on the floor. But really talking to the team at Louis Vuitton, not unfortunately, but I couldn't move to New York City. It wasn't something that was going to be possible for me. And at that moment, we weren't all doing the remote things like that are available now, which I think has been so tremendous because it's opening so many doors to this incredible talent pool that maybe we didn't have access to because they weren't in a certain location, right? So I spoke to my HR people, and I really did some soul searching. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. And I don't think it's going to be within Louis, but I did explore. Right. So I think the first thing is start to ask, whether you're in a review process or your direct reports, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm really passionate about this area. What would I need to do either to add on to my skills or, to further myself in the company to get to this point? And I'm hoping any really great brand would say, okay, here's maybe the succession. Here's some steps that you can take. But for me, I had to then look outside. So ironically, I had contacted the recruiting firm that actually, I don't know if you know this story, April, and all the things that we have been through together, but the recruiting firm that placed me when I first had started at Louis Vuitton, I remember calling the owner because it was such a great experience. And I'm like, hey, you should probably hire me. I know luxury. That's going to be a huge leap of faith. And, when you laugh and we talk about the days where people are like, are you crazy? You're leaving Louis Vuitton to go work for some small firm. And I'm like, yeah, because it's a firm that really focused on luxury retail and staffing and luxury space. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I don't have any of my own clients. A lot of what we do is heavily relied on commission. So I didn't have a salary right away I was jumping into, but I had faith in myself and the confidence to know that I was not going to let myself fail. And it was a little tricky to start. I mean, when I started here with Bowerman Group, where I am now, gosh, it was 2011, 12. So I've almost been here 9 years. And the recruiting space for me on the agency side, it wasn't as, there weren't as many firms, agency-wise kind of doing what we're doing there as there are now. So I feel like from a competition point of view, I got into it early on where I really started to establish relationships with CEOs, with hiring authorities. And I think that they kind of liked that they saw in my background, like, oh, you come from LVMH. And I'm like, yes, you could hire me for your stores, but, I would rather hire people for your stores. So no, it was a really cool conversation. And what was the nice pivot for me, it was like, I got to work with all these different brands.
Right.
So, coming from luxury, you see the Saint Laurent, and of course, like underneath LVMH, there's all those incredible brands, Fendi, Dior, all of that I was so connected to working with LV. But it really gave me this moment to kind of step outside my comfort zone, take a risk, take a leap of faith. And that was kind of my choice to pivot out. But I would say that follow your passions. Get really, really, really clear about what you want, and leverage your network and commit to making a move and a change and ask for help. What do I need to do to get here? Yeah.
I think you said something that was really, sorry to cut you off, but I think you said something that was really key. You said, look inside your business and then start looking at what you're passionate about, and then start asking people for help. Like I had that experience when I was at Holtz, and I share that in the book. It's, I was really passionate about leadership and the power of leadership and good leaders and good bosses and what a great district manager can create, or a great store manager, or a great regional, or the opposite of how it impacts people and their experiences and the customer experience. And so I remember going to a director at HR when I was at Holtz and saying, there's a position posted for learning and development director, I'd love to apply for it. And they were like, well, you're not really educated in higher education, and they entered the conversation, but they basically said, yeah, you're never, and nicely, you're probably never going to get that job. And
thanks. Yeah.
Really? I was like, I'm going to show you. I went off and retail leadership development company, right? Because I was so passionate, and yes, it was a risk, and it takes work and effort every day. But I'm so passionate about what a good leader can do and what a good store manager can do, and impact of that on a team. That's why I built it, because I looked within my own business. There was a time when I was like, oh, I'm tired, like it's exhausting. But why was I in that place? It was because of a bad leader that I was working for. It wasn't the brand, it wasn't the customers, it wasn't the hours. I loved my team, but it was the leader I was working for. So then I was like, if I can help leaders be great leaders, then people are going to love their job and be re-engaged. And that's what I did. But looking inside, I think about what you're actually doing, because like you said, you are hiring all the time in that role, and puzzle pieces, and now you're a successful recruiter, right? Because you followed your passion.
Thank you. I mean, I hope that, giving good client experiences and putting people in their dream jobs, that's a very kind compliment. For me, it's about just listening to people, listening to the clients. And I don't think that's done enough, honestly, in our space, especially when you're working with key executives, people looking to pivot, even managers in the field that, like you had just said, are coming maybe from environments and looking to pivot because they've not had the best experience or not have the best bosses. And it's my responsibility, and I always say I have to sleep at the end of the day, to work with a candidate. And I'm very picky about the clients that I work with, to know that someone will be going to a good home and that they will be supportive. And I do my due diligence on my end. And hey, listen, I'm grateful that I can be selective, but I would rather work with quality than quantity.
Yeah.
Because it's our credibility on the line, and it's you, April, waking up every day and saying like, gosh, she just went to an amazing space, having, sometimes it's like 2 or 3 months that we're working together. It's a little relationship journey that we form, getting you through the process, like making sure you're feeling really good about everything. So the gratification that I get truly comes from someone being like, oh my gosh, like my dream job, I'm so excited. And that's been sort of my model, that I have not wavered or compromised on. And it's just all about building relationships with people.
If you go backwards, right, and you think about leadership, and when you were in those roles and you were growing your career, that gave you that kind of platform to do what you're doing now. Because I always say, when you're in a leadership role, you can use that as a platform to pivot, right, and do other things. But like, what were you known for as a leader, or like, what does leadership mean to you? Like, is leadership really? I mean, you hire and place leaders all day in organizations that make a difference. So, like, what does leadership mean to Meghan? Like, how would you describe a good leader, or what does it mean? And if there's any tips or words of wisdom that you can share with this audience that would help them become a better leader or more success.
Yeah, I mean, I just showed up every day for my people. I feel like I had all these wonderful children at varying ages that I truly wholeheartedly cared about. And I wanted them to succeed. And it wasn't about me. It was about everybody, right? So when we made a goal, when, so we did something incredible in the department, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I did this and it was like, these are the people that help drive the business. These were, the clients that they brought in. So for me, leadership means being present, being empathetic, being supportive. I mean, empathy and compassion right now, 2020 going to 2021, besides the word pivot, those 2 words are probably the key of any future success, because in this environment, and even back in the day, people want to come into businesses where they're valued, where they're seen, where they're heard, where they're treated like people. Retail is so rewarding, but is not an easy business either. Yeah. And, a lot of times people show up for work and they've had terrible mornings, or their cat died, or something happened, and they still show up. And, sometimes we play a little Jekyll and Hyde, but I think being a compassionate leader that's like, you know what, do you need a minute? Are you okay? Do you want to sit in the back? Can I buy you lunch? For me, it was just about putting my ego, I have no ego, like putting that ego, like in two stars down. It's not about me, and then just really showing up for my people and being present and being on the floor, knowing what is going on in your business and knowing the clients. And I just remember, with my teams, like coming out on the floor and being like, Meghan, can I introduce you to my clients? And just creating these like, amazing memories. I have so many stories, but I think it's showing up, it's being present. It's being excited for the day. It's being a good communicator, good, bad, and otherwise. If somebody is performing, give them a pat on the back. Celebrate successes. If someone is not, you got to share that as well. And you have to be fair and consistent. Yeah. So I'm sure we've all seen it a lot, and especially in big teams. There are definitely managers I've worked with that have favored certain people over others, and that's just not fair. At the end of the day, everybody contributes something different, and maybe sure, if somebody has more of an engaging personality, or you are drawn to them, we can't single people out. We can't have favoritism. We can't not punish somebody or reprimand somebody for something and someone else not the other. So I think it's being present, being empathetic, being fair, being consistent, and being involved.
Yeah, being involved. That's what I always say. I'm like being involved. Like when I was running 240 stores, go up at the weekend, put an apron on and get behind the counter and talk to people, right?
It's so fun. Oh my gosh. And you feel like you're like the president, like, they're like, oh my God, Meghan's out on the floor. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what happens when I'm not here? That's like what I would be scared about. And I feel like to this day, I still get messages from my amazing team that are just like, thank you. Like, thank you for being who you are and who you were. Because again, you really don't get that in the businesses. I think a manager sometimes, maybe a green manager or someone gets that title, that power, and they're like, I'm the manager. And then you're like, what do you do back in the office all day. Like, what is going on back there? It was so fun. I just never knew the allure of like the back room. And I'm like, get out on the floor. You know, it's like, that's where the business is happening. And that, I think, is what really just energizes you, being around clients and creating experiences. So truly, that's what,
yeah. With memorable moments, right? I'm looking at it's 12:24. We've got about 6 minutes left. We're going to wrap up soon. And I want to get to your pivot, like what you're doing now, so you can share with us what you're doing. But you said like memorable moment. I have some amazing memorable moments in my career where I met the founders of Gap. I met, Howard Schultz when I was a store manager in London. Like I have crazy memorable when I was working at Armani Exchange in Miami and Beyonce came in the shop. I was like, what?
I was like on the floor.
So what you must have a memorable, and memorable moments of when teams did things to me. But what's a memorable moment for you?
I mean, again, same like with LV, all the celebrities, all the people. What you do, you become like immune. You kind of can't like fangirl. Because a lot of people are coming in being like, I don't want anyone to recognize me. And you're like, okay, Cameron Diaz, like, we see you. Okay, like, you're not hiding. But I don't know. We have so many. I think meeting just incredible people through this platform. So I had an opportunity where we did an event where I was able to spend time with Buzz Aldrin, who was like the first man, hello, like man moon, So that was like really cool. And he had so many stories to tell. I mean, another time we had a lot of people that came in that were very sick. I remember this one girl and her mom and her family who had cancer. She was this sweet little girl. And not to get emotional, but it's like people coming in and like providing these experiences where for whatever they have going on in their life, they can come in and kind of forget, you know, about it. And I remember like running down to a toy store. I'm like, you don't want the toys at LV, right? You're like, there's $7,000 bracelets. Like, those aren't toys. But like running down to a toy store and just like the smile on this girl's face and her mom. And, they were in the shop for like hours. And, just like knowing that you have an impact to like make somebody's day, life-changing memories, whether it's your first dang purchase or like you've been in the store 6,000 times. It really, the certain people I've met have been great, but those real special experiences where someone showed up and they're like, I want to go to LV. I'm making it a point to come and visit Meghan, or, I'm really sick and I may not have much time left, but I'm going to make the best of my time. It was just like, I can't.
To me, that is underestimated or undervalued as perceived outside of the industry. And I think that's what makes retail so special. Hey, Fabienne. Hey, Kareem. Nice to see you guys. But that's what makes it so special. And as much as all the technology and all the innovation and everything that's happening in our industry right now, because it's super fast. I mean, I've been on houses, I've been on all these different panels, and I love it. But you cannot forget that at the essence of retail, it comes back to a really great smile, a really great service experience, and just making somebody feel valued and special. And, that is the beauty and the joy of what we get to do in retail. And I think, managers that are watching this, I know it's stressful right now, and you guys that are in the field, it's stressful, but just remember how important that is. Like, there's those moments where you made such a difference in somebody's life, and even with your staff, with customers, that maybe you were the only person that they got out to see today, and you made a huge difference. So that is an amazing quality of retail people. And I think that's what makes our industry so special. And I bricks and mortars is not dead. It's just going to keep, right? Like, it's not dead. It's going to keep evolving, and leadership matters. And I think investing in people matters in those boxes, and not to forget about that, right? Let's not forget that the people in the box actually matter, and to keep investing in them, because it's so crucial. So you've started something new. You've got this podcast called, you want to explain what that is? We've got a couple
Yeah, sure. So my podcast is called Pivot with Purpose. So as I've used the word pivot probably 10,000 times in this conversation, Pivot with Purpose is, again, storytelling, so I really created this podcast to not only highlight my pivot, my pandemic pivot, I guess you would call it, in the midst of mid-year last year, almost a year ago. Geez, from March, we were all like in it. But telling stories and just sharing, very much like you're doing here, insight, wisdom, knowledge, accessibility, like having real raw conversations about all different things: retail, wellness, health, different platforms, people pivoting themselves in their careers to hopefully to have someone listen in and be like, wow, that's me, or wow, I didn't think about something that way. And a couple of powerful conversations I've talked about. We had a great chat with a CEO all about retail and mental health.
Yeah.
And like you just said, I mean, people showing up and coming to the stores, like it's been a lot. There's a lot of grace and gratitude that I think people need to give themselves and their teams right now. And things are evolving, and silver linings, and I think light at the end of the tunnel. It's there, and retail absolutely is not dead. But my podcast is just really to continue to share and motivate and inspire. And with that, diversifying my recruiting offering, which I still am going strong in recruiting and hiring across retail, corporate, and wholesale.
So if you need help with a job, this is the lady.
Yay! Message me. But I also do career coaching and business coaching. So I created a platform called Meghan Houle Method, and finishing up my master coaching class that really allows me to work with people in such a different way. So if I can't work with you initially on a project, I'm obviously going to keep somebody in mind. But if you're still struggling trying to find a job, if you're frustrated about not hearing back, if you feel like your resume is a hot mess, if you don't know how to interview, you haven't interviewed in 20 years. I mean, I've been talking to people that have been furloughed that haven't had an interview 15, 20 years and not know where to start. So it's an opportunity to be able to work with me in another sense. And I do some group coaching coming up. And I really have almost like a one-stop shop for all things career, personal development, business development. And I'm so grateful to be able to have, created it all and have the support of people like you and the network that really champion the wins, right? I want everyone to win. If anything, I can spread very much like you, April, is that positive effect. And this is extremely authentic, guys. April knows me. My energy is pretty constant in terms of the passion I bring and the enthusiasm that I bring. But
I just love, I always say, the positive effect you have on others is a ripple effect, right? And it goes out, right? So one positive thing you said, or one email that you answered, or one smile, or whatever it is, saying hello to somebody walking down the street, it's just that positive effect, and it's so important. And I think what I'm really grateful for about 2020 and going into 2021 is meeting people like yourself, meeting people,
me too.
Huge network of retail leaders that have actually been in the field, done the job, pivoted, done other things, now building their business, and now coming back to give this advice and these words of wisdom to people that are following in our footsteps. And I think that's so important, because it's a conversation. When I was growing in retail, there wasn't retail leaders out there, or we didn't have social platforms like this then. This conversation, and retail is the third highest employment sector globally. That's an army of people that can make such an impact in the world and are doing it every day. And so I'm just really grateful for people like you and my network and having amazing conversations. So it's 33 minutes. We always like to wrap up at about 5. We know everybody's got a lot to do, and we want people to watch this on the replay. So I'm just so grateful, Meghan, for your energy today. Every time I talk to you, I'm always leave
we're ready to go.
So if you need help looking for a job, Meghan is your girl. You need to get in contact with her. But just everybody who's watching this, share this with your retail network. We're here every Wednesday. We show up at 12 o'clock noon Eastern Standard Time, talking to retail leaders about their career and, sharing that positive effect of retail leadership and globally. And we can't wait to see you on the next on the next broadcast with another guest. So thank you, Meghan, so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.